This is your video for volume of cylinders. Everybody should have a paper like this. You will take the paper and you will fold it until the outside edges meet the middle, like this. You'll see the words volume of cylinders for this section of cylinders, volume of cones for this section of cones, and volume of spheres down here, which includes the bottom section. We're going to be working on the volume of cones, or the volume of cylinders today. The volume of cylinders deal with cylindrical shapes, as in cans, paper towel rolls, cups sometimes, water bottles. Those are cylinders. Cylinders have a circle base that is on the top and the bottom, and it's almost like a tube. So, in order to take the volume of a cylinder, we will find this formula on a star chart that tells us the volume equals capital B times H. Capital B stands for the area of the base. And since we're talking about what the base actually is on a cylinder, it is a circle. The base is a circle. So if we're trying to find the area of the circle, we'll need to add the actual area of a circle formula, which is found here. Pi r squared is the area of a circle formula that we're going to need in order to find the area of our base. So we really needed this formula, not a capital B. And then H stands for height. Every cylinder has a height. This one is 10 centimeters. And what we do is we use the formula that it created in order to find the volume of our cylinder. So let's try this. And on this video, we're gonna round to the nearest whole. So I'm just gonna write this up here. We're gonna practice rounding to different numbers. Just as a side note, we're gonna practice rounding. Okay, so let's first start by rewriting our formula. V equals capital B times H. And remember, the capital B was the area of the base, and in order to find the area of our circle down here, or up here, they're the same circle, we need to use pi r squared, because that's how you find the area of a circle. Then we're going to multiply that times the height of the cylinder. So now that we have a plan, let's fill in the numbers with the numbers that they give us. So pi we know is 3.14, but it's nice that our calculator actually has a pi button that we don't have to type 3.1 for every time, and we can get a much more accurate answer. The radius is found when a line is drawn halfway across a circle. So pi times 5 squared. I use parentheses to represent multiplication. You could always just use a multiplication symbol in between. And then, of course, I use another dot to represent another set of multiplication. I multiply it by the height, which is 10. Now that I have this written down next to me, I am going to go to my calculator, and I'm going to type it in to my calculator here. I'm going to type pi times, and when I do times 5, I could either use the multiplication symbol or I can use the parentheses. So I'm just going to use the parentheses just to show how we could use the parentheses. Squared times 10. I get 785.398. Now, since I wanted to round to the nearest whole number, that would be in the ones place. So I would look to the decimal. The very first decimal is a 3. That is a small number. That means we do not make this 5 jump up one more. So we would leave it as 785. And this is counting in centimeters. And we're going to call this centimeters cubed. That's how we measure volume, is in cubic units. Basically saying we're filling up something with a bunch of tiny, tiny, tiny cubes to see how much is filled, or how much it takes to fill up an object with cubes. Okay, so let's move on to our next cylinder here. I'm going to change the color so we don't get confused on what I'm working on. And I'm going to rewrite my equation. I want you to get in the habit of writing your equation every time you work on a question. It's going to help you stay organized and stay in the right steps. Keep the right steps. So the area of the base, I just kind of drew an arrow because I know I'm going to need to replace the area of the base with pi r squared, because I have to find the area of this circular base. I'm going to need to use pi r squared in order to find the area. Okay? And then I multiply it times my height once I figure that out, and I'll get my volume. So let's start putting in some numbers. I have pi times the radius. The radius on this one, is not 16. This is a diameter. What I need is a halfway line. So if the whole thing was 16, then I know cutting 16 in half would give me 8. My radius is 8. And then, of course, the square multiplied times the height, which is also 8. All right, I type this into my calculator. Pi times 8 squared times 8 again. This time I used the multiplication symbol instead of parentheses just to show you that it was the same thing. My answer is 1,608.5. This 0.5 is what I'm looking at to round to my nearest ones place. I'm rounding to the nearest ones place so that 8 is going to have to jump up to a 9, because anytime you have the number that is 5 or higher, it makes the number that we're rounding to jump up 1. So my answer for this one is 1,609 cubic units. Didn't say that we were measuring in inches or centimeters, so we're just going to write the number. All right, this cylinder is tipped over on its side. It doesn't really matter too much. The B stands for area of the base, which we know we have to use pi r squared, and they're going to multiply times the height. We got pi times 7 squared times the height, which is 12. Even though this is laying on its side, it still is the height, because once you stand up the cylinder upright, 12 will be the height. So whenever you calculate, you will get pi times 7 squared times 12. You might notice that I did not put a multiplication symbol in between pi and 7, and that is because it's going to recognize, my calculator recognizes that anytime you have a number next to pi, it is multiplication. 1,847.2, and the 0.2 does not make us jump the 7 up to an 8 because the 2 is small enough. So whenever I round to the nearest whole number, I am going to say 1,847. All right, so just like rectangular prisms, which we worked with, the volume of a cylinder is the area of its base multiplied by its height.